Today's video, I just kind of want to talk about like what my current district is doing right. Anything that I share today, I want to preface it by saying that the purpose of this video is not to slight anybody that I've worked with in the past, anyone that I've worked under, or my district as a whole that I came from. But the purpose is really just to say what I appreciate about my new district and what they're doing right, what they're doing differently, not just from my previous district, but from many districts that I've worked for in the past, that I appreciate and that I aspire to as an upcoming leader. Good morning. Today is Friday, November the 15th, 2024, and welcome to a new vlog. My name is Charlotte. I am the trauma-informed teacher. This is a channel more about teacher self-care and the trauma of giving your life in service to other people if you don't remember to take care of yourself. So some people might come here thinking they're going to gain some strategies for handling students with trauma, and that can be part of my channel from time to time, but it's not the main focus. The main focus is thinking about things that we can do to take care of ourselves so that we have enough to give back to others. So welcome if you're new here. I hope you'll subscribe. I normally post videos twice weekly, but I've been going through a little bit of a slow season with my vlogging because I am currently working on the very last part of my principal internship. I finish in December, and right now I'm working on my portfolio items. I'm doing a project to improve reading in our school building. And so, yeah, I've been very busy and it's all good. Like everything I'm doing right now is good. And I'm actually extremely happy all day long, pretty much with everything that I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm at home today. I took a day off because I've had an exceptionally busy past 2 weeks with getting our after-school program started and rolling. And honestly, even before that, I was busy with the preparations for it and communicating with our outside agency that's supporting us, which is the Salvation Army. And so I've had other things going on, like I've had church things. I'm helping with a church event that's coming up in a couple of weeks. I just auditioned for our church worship team, and I'm going to be starting that, but not until after my internship is done. And I've been doing a Bible study, so I have things going on to fill me up and also to serve in other capacities so that I'm not totally focused on school and have no outside life. And those things have been wonderful because the experiences and the relationships and friendships that I've made with people in the area that we're planning to move to have been like just a great way to get us started. And I'm so excited to actually eventually move out there and become part of the community. But because of that, my schedule has been insanely busy. So this vlog is kind of like a catch you up, share how I'm really doing through all of this. If you've been here with me for the long haul, you know that last year I tried to set up my principal internship in the district that I was working in. I had been there in that district for quite some time. My husband and I actually worked twice for our previous district. Once when we first moved to North Carolina, and then we worked again for 5 years up until last year at the end of the year. The district that I came from, I had built a lot of relationships. I had a lot of friendships. There are wonderful people there and a lot of people that I miss. And I definitely miss my students that I've worked with at all different age levels, elementary, middle school, and I know some of the high school kids now too. But the problem was that my district was extremely small and everyone is wearing many hats, and they were going through a phase of like really focusing on improving the buildings. There was a lot going on at the district office that had to do with, getting grants and things like that, bids all of the things that go into adding on and expanding your building and, updating your buildings. It's a very, very intense process. So I needed to ask for an internship at a time when priorities were really focused in another area in the district. And that's something that as a principal intern that I'm starting to pay attention to and to learn that sometimes it's not that people are unwilling to help, that it's more that, there has to be a focus every year in your district for, what's going to get the most time, the most attention, and what's going to be at the top of the list, because there are so many different people that are needing different things in a district, regardless of whether it's small or if it's a larger district. And where you put your time and attention is really going to determine the direction of the future of your district. So, hats off to anyone that works in a central office leadership role, because it's not easy to make those decisions from year to year and to guide your district with so many differing needs and opinions from your stakeholders. I'm not sure that I ever really aspire to be at that level of the educational process. I think I may be looking more at joining up with a university to be a professor at some point after I've retire, soft retire, I guess you could say, because I feel like I'm going to be doing something in education the rest of my life. I just really feel that deep in my soul that it's really part of who I am. But all that to say, now that I'm actually in the program and I'm working it, I'm seeing how vital those things that I was asking for really are. And that, it's just confirmation for me that, I was not overreacting about what I needed as far as hours, because it is very difficult to try to teach and also get internship hours. You can't count everything that you're doing, from 8 to 3:30. You just can't. You have to be doing things that go above and beyond your teaching in order to be able to count for principal internship. So I still feel very strongly that I made the right decision in moving schools. I have no ill thoughts towards my previous district. It was a frustrating situation, but now that I'm, moved into my new setting, I could see a bigger picture. And, I think on this channel, I always aspire to be honest and truthful with where I'm at the moment. But the thing that is sometimes difficult for people to understand is that when you pull up a vlog, you're getting a snapshot of that person's life and where they were at that moment that they filmed. And you're not necessarily getting how they feel every single day of their lives. I'm having an extremely positive experience where I'm at. So I'm nothing but grateful for the memories that I have with my old school district. And I'm still a neighbor of, many of the people that I worked with. And so, I'm connected to that community still. But I'm really, really grateful and enjoying my experiences in my new school district. I do think that right now in education, there are a lot of things wrong with education. But then if you look at the flip side of that, there are a lot of people that are out there trying to do better. And today's video, I just kind of want to talk about what my current district is doing right. Anything that I share today, I want to preface it by saying that the purpose of this video is not to slight anybody that I've worked with in the past, anyone that I've worked under, or my district as a whole that I came from. But the purpose is really just to say what I appreciate about my new district and what they're doing right, what they're doing differently, not just from my previous district, but from many districts that I've worked for in the past, that I appreciate and that I aspire to as an upcoming leader. So first thing that my district I noticed has done differently that really helps make my life easier is giving time for the things that they think that we need to do. For example, at the beginning of the year, I was paid for a day to come in and work in my classroom, to move my classroom ahead of the teacher work days as a new employee. That's something that no one has ever done, to my recollection, in any of the districts that I've been in the past. When I transferred districts before, I still had to go to the same meetings. There were a few times when I would have my principals say, hey, you can skip out on this one because it's not as much of an important meeting for a new person or for your role in work in your classroom. So I wouldn't say that no one thought about it, but this was the first time that I actually had a scheduled day that I could come and work in my classroom that was paid my regular teacher salary, or it was paid like the same as like you would get if you were attending a workshop. It was paid like that, and it was in my first paycheck. So I really appreciated that. We also have days built into our calendar that allow us to update our final grades before each report card, and days that are built for conferencing and getting ready for the conference, which I really appreciate, because getting ready for parent-teacher conferences is a whole process. And often in the past, I would find that if my district did give a day where the students were home for parent-teacher conferences, I usually was so busy prior to that I could not actually prepare for my conferences in time to run my conferences during that day. So what I would usually do is I would typically spend time before that day getting my grades together, and then on the day of being off for parent teacher conferences, I would spend that time organizing all of the work samples, data sheets, things like that I was going to give parents, putting them in folders and getting ready for the conferences, calling anyone who still didn't have a time, things like that are very difficult to do during the regular teaching day, which is often the best time to try to get a hold of parents as well. So I really appreciated having a day to prepare and a day to hold conferences. I actually got not quite half of my conferences, but close to it, done on the day that was scheduled for teacher conferences. So that was like refreshing. And then I only had to do a few scattered conferences here and there over the next week or two. And my conference sheet was not due for like 3 weeks. So that really made it doable to get everything done in a timely manner, and not feel like I was stressed or struggling or completely exhausted, staying after many nights. I just, did a few here and there. So that was really nice. A third thing that they have done is that we are writing curriculum for next year. We're like updating our units of study, and they are giving us a common planning time to talk about some of our strategies and how we are incorporating different supplementals to make sure that there's consistency across the grade level, how we are structuring our literacy block to make sure there's consistency across the grade level. They're giving us a half day in the afternoon coming up next week not next week, in another week or so, for the purpose of working on those units of study. They're not asking me to stay after school for that, which would be very hard for me this year, because any time that I spend after school is usually something that I'm doing for my internship. And so that would just push my time even later. And since we're driving an hour, that's like a big deal for me right now to not have a lot of after school meetings. And to speak of after school meetings in general, most of what we are doing is scheduled during the regular school day. We have very little required after school meetings, and the ones that we do have are very short, to the point. They're like 30 minutes. Occasionally they might be 45, but it's rarely ever anything that lasts for an hour. It's always 30 or 40 minutes and we're done and out of there. So that's very reasonable, because I would be spending that time in my classroom anyway. So time, I feel like, is respected and valued, and that is huge. Time is something that as a teacher, you never have enough of, and having just a little bit of peace of mind that you can get your regular duties done and still get home and spend time at your house, or, doing church activities or whatever else that you participate in the evenings, spending time with family, that time is protected, is very much appreciated. In the past, when I have changed schools, I have frequently felt like I've been treated like I was a beginning teacher and had no experience when it comes to my ability to share my own thoughts, like in a problem-solving way. So, for example, if the district was making, if the district took a certain direction instructionally, or the school improvement team was considering a direction, and I was sitting in some sort of a planning meeting, if I shared my concerns, or even if I went one-on-one to administrators and shared concerns, it was perceived as though it was like negative and some sort of attack on the way things were being done, when actually I'm a problem solver at heart. And so anytime that I share my own perspective on an issue, it's not to complain or to attack what's going on currently, but it's more to say, hey, I've seen this done in other ways, in other places, and have we considered doing this? When I came to my new school district, I noticed immediately that differences of opinion were welcome. They were not seen as a threat, that even the principal can be challenged without being offended, and that intellectual discourse is seen as a valuable part of the educational process in our school. This is definitely the way that I want to lead my building when I am a principal. And I think that it's so valuable to consider the fact that everyone sitting in a meeting at a school has spent hours and hours preparing for that role to be there. They have gone through the required courses, they've done papers, they've done research, and if you have a teacher that's come from another school building, they have done in the field research. So really, everyone sitting in a meeting, all the stakeholders involved in making decisions, should be treated as highly educated people, because that's what they are. And highly educated people should be able to have educational discourse without being offended by someone else's opinion. It's the diversity of opinions that can make the problem-solving process so strong. And I think that's one of the reasons why our school functions so well, because everyone has the right to speak up and share what they're seeing, their own experience. In education, there's a lot of research, but then there is field research, which when you are in a classroom and you are working on methods, you try things and you learn by trial and error what actually works. A teacher with many years of experience has years and years of field research that she or he has done, and that should be respected and received by a new school district as valuable. So instead of viewing a teacher that shares the difference of opinion or something contrary to the way things are being done currently, instead of viewing that as negativity or complaining, it should be viewed for the valuable asset that it is, which is information. And it's not just opinion information. It's information based on years of research, of actually trying things and seeing what works in a real classroom. So I think that in this school district, I have felt respected. I felt that my years of experience mattered, and I felt that camaraderie of the ability to discuss with my colleagues my own perceptions of a situation, even if they were different, and my ideas being heard and considered when the final decisions were made. And even after a decision has been made by administrator, it is up for question because we are all educated people. And I think that when those educated opinions are valued and that experience on the job is valued, that it creates a stronger community, a stronger problem-solving process that only benefits students in the long run. The third difference that I've noticed in my current school district is that I am free to take my leave days without any questioning or judgment. I have worked in different districts and people have had different opinions on this. And there are some school districts that I've experienced that when you take a day off, it's seen as though you are not being considerate of kids. But teachers are human beings with real medical needs, with real situations that happen in their families and things that need to be taken care of that sometimes just cannot be taken care of within the regular times off. Doctors' offices are only open during the day, during the week when teachers are also supposed to be in the classroom, and they have, family needs. Sometimes their children get sick. Sometimes they need to take their kid to the doctor. There are years in your career, if you stay in education long enough, where you're going to need to take more time than other years. I've experienced situations where I ran into a year like that, and every time I needed time off, it was questioned. In 2012, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I am in a much better place than I was then in managing this, but it is a chronic thing that I have to be aware of. And fibromyalgia, it's something that you just have to manage your stress symptoms, because stress symptoms turn into physical illness if not handled. And so there are times when I have to take a day off as a preventative measure, because I know that if I don't take a day off, I have those early warning symptoms that tell me that I'm about to go into a longer term flare-up. And a longer term flare-up will mean that I will be less productive whether I come to work or not, because of how I will be feeling over time. So there have been times when I have had to take days like that, and I try to be very honest and open, even though honestly, you're not required by the state of North Carolina to tell your administrator why you're taking a sick day. There are schools that require you to tell why you're taking one, which is a little bit, it's kind of in violation of HIPAA to require that. However, there are places that have asked for doctor's notes. There are places that just kind of like make you feel like you're letting down the learning community. But if you don't take care of yourself, then you don't have anything left to take care of your students. Anyone in a serving profession has to be constantly monitoring their own health and wellness, both physically and mentally. And teaching is a difficult profession. Sometimes teachers need to take a mental health day. I'm not suggesting that, teachers use their sick days just to use their sick days. But I am suggesting that if you need a day, that I think that it's reasonable to take a day, whether that be for a physical reason or whether that be for a mental health reason, because the mind and body are connected. And eventually, if you don't slow down, your body will catch up to what's going on with you, even if you're just stressed. So, as a leader, I want to honor and respect my teachers' ability to take those days off, and I want to plan accordingly so that I have things in place in the case that someone cannot be there. My current district doesn't ask any questions and supports teachers when they need to take time off, as long as it's not being abused, which means, the students aren't suffering from frequent absences that are within the teacher's control. My district also has supported teachers through some major illnesses, and I've seen how they have structured their staff to take care of that classroom to make sure that students got what they needed and the teacher got the support that was needed for the life situation that she was going through. And so I trust my building to give me that grace when it's needed. And quite frankly, I have not missed very much time this year at all. I find that with fibromyalgia, when I in my mind know that, if I take a day off, it's going to be judged, it's going to be talked about, it's going to be seen in a negative light, then it almost exacerbates the situation because it makes me feel like I really need a day, but I can't take it. And that is stressful, which the stress adds to the physical symptoms. So I have missed only, I think, a day and a half of sick time this year so far. And the only other time I've missed has been for professional development that my school required. So I have not been out of the classroom very much this year. And I have, been able to come in feeling my best, in a good mindset, being my best for my students, and that's benefiting them in the long run. The fourth thing that my school does differently is discipline. There is a common misconception in discipline today that consequences are not helpful to students. And I have a firm disagreement with that statement. In fact, I think that the practice of counting suspensions and other disciplinary measures and comparing them across the state, that is a broken system, and it's not working for the actual issues that are happening in our classrooms. Restorative practices came along, and the intention of those who created restorative practices, it was spot on. Students have to be taught how to behave in a formal setting if they've never been in one. And, classrooms, those are formal settings. Educational settings are formal settings like the business world. There are different expectations in life when we go places. We know that if you go to the movies after you've been sunning at the beach, you're going to put on different clothing. You would hopefully put a cover up on when you go to a restaurant, things like that. We know that there are different ways of acting, like if we're in a place that, like a library. So students are going to encounter different expectations in different environments, and they do need to learn specifically what's expected in those different environments, school being one of them. This is actually loving our students to prepare them for these things. And so the foundation of restorative practices I believe in, because if a student doesn't know something, they can't be disciplined for willful disobedience. However, there comes a point in time when a student is being childish because they haven't been held accountable for something that they already know how to do. In my school, I feel like we strike a really good balance of holding students accountable, demanding accountability for the things that are going to make them better members of society and better learners so that they will get more out of their education. We hold them accountable in different ways. Some of the ways we hold them accountable is by having one-to-one conversations with them and getting the student to share what they already know so that we can see that they're aware of what they're doing, but they just were being childish and not connecting the dots and thinking about it in the moment. Kids do have undeveloped brains, and so we know that they're going to do things impulsively, and part of our job as adults is to talk them through the process of holding themselves accountable, to talk them through the process of we need to think before we act. And the more that we have these conversations with them, the more they start to be aware of this is my job to manage myself, to reflect on my own behavior, and to do better every day. But when a child has continuously done something or they're doing something that is really disrupting an entire class, keeping a teacher from teaching, or they're doing something that could be unsafe in some way, then that behavior has to have a consequence. If there's no consequence, then there's no motivation for a student to change. And if they're not changing on their own after already approaching the student and reflecting and having one-to-one conversations and teaching moments, then something more is needed. I think that there is a misunderstanding about consequences, that consequences always have to be given as punishment. And consequences and punishment aren't necessarily the same thing. You can be giving a consequence, and the purpose of the consequence be to help a student mature in an area that they're not growing in currently, because consequences are things that students remember better than just simple conversation. If we continue to have conversations with students, but we don't provide any consequences, then there are students who will never mature to the next level because they feel like they don't have to. And so it's actually the most loving form of discipline to provide a student with a consequence that's going to help them remember not to do that in the future, or at least check their own behavior and think, am I going to make this decision or not, before they repeat the behavior next time. Not only that, but we have to maintain an environment in which teachers can actually do their jobs. And my current district does a great job of striking this balance. We are following Capturing Kids' Hearts, which is a program that it's not a curriculum, but it's a way of interacting with students and interacting with each other that develops a positive learning environment. It develops loving responses to each other, an affirming environment for students to interact with each other and with the teacher. And that's the foundation, right? We have to have those relationships. We know that. This is nothing that teachers haven't been doing. Good teachers have been building relationships with students ever since teaching was a thing. But also knowing that there are times when consequences are necessary. I think that, we always should check on our students and make sure that it wasn't a misunderstanding of the expectation. But if a child is doing something over and over again, and we've already checked and we know that they understand the expectation, then that's a choice. And we need to enable them and empower them to make better choices. Because if we don't, then in the long run, we're hurting them. We're telling them that, the rules are there, but you might follow them and you might not, and they're up for discussion. There are going to be authority figures in their lives that those things that those authority figures tell them to do are not up for discussion. If you do not come to work on time every day, you lose your job. And that is just a basic thing that we learn as we're entering adulthood. But if we don't build the foundation for consequences, natural consequences, when children are young, then we're setting them up for a whole lot of grief and frustration and potentially loss of financial ability to provide for themselves when they can't function in an environment where there's an authority figure. So always allowing students to question the people that are in authority of them and not follow the directives of the person that's in authority. It's actually not, in the end, a loving response. Sometimes things that are going on require timeout, and a suspension is one timeout, but there are other options as well. There are, timeout within the building. You can have a ISS. There are different things that can be done for the student. In the long term, producing citizens that are ready to join the workforce is about more than just whether they can read or write or do math. It's also about, are they going to be ready to function in those complex work environments? And some of those skills that they need to do that are emotional regulation skills that it's actually even more foundational than whether they can read or write. We do need them in the classroom. We do need them learning, but all of the students need to have the same advantages. And when one student is derailing that for the whole classroom, it's not beneficial to look at the teacher and say, what can you do differently, when the teacher has already established rules and procedures and is being consistent with the discipline. At that point, you have to look at the child and say, it's time for a consequence. And so numbers don't tell the whole story of what's happening in a classroom. That's why I think that holding school districts to certain numbers without knowing what's going on in that particular setting is an unreasonable expectation, and it's something that's broken in our educational system that needs to be fixed. And lastly, the fifth thing that my district does differently that I really appreciate, my school building especially is a place where teachers love and respect each other. I have never experienced the level of support that I have experienced in this job in all of my years of teaching. And I had a decent support system at my last school, but teachers check on each other. They don't leave each other alone in their classrooms to fend for themselves. They come to their classroom and say, do you need a restroom break? How's your day going? How did this lesson go? What did you do for this? How are you grading this? I think that the teachers care for each other and the administrators care for the staff is one of the best things about my current school. I do not feel isolated at all. Even teachers that are self-contained, where they're not switching classes, they're having the same group of students all day, receive that level of support. And I really appreciate the fact that when I go and talk to a teacher in this school about something that is maybe difficult for me, that I'm struggling with, I don't have to worry about, is that teacher going back and saying something to someone else about my inability to do this or that. You would not believe how often I've experienced that sort of behavior in other school districts, not just the one that I came from recently, but over the years in many different school districts. Supporting each other and believing the best in each other, it creates an environment that everybody can do their best and thrive, and everyone feels that they belong. And I'm really enjoying that about my district. I trust the people that I work with, and I trust them to have my best interest at heart. And I know that they're there for me, and I also am motivated to be there for them. So once again, to reiterate, the purpose of this video is to show the things that I think that are positive that schools can do to make a better environment for teachers, for students, and to make a great learning environment in general. If you are a teacher who is considering looking for a new job over the next year, or a teacher who is in teacher education and you will be seeking your first teaching job, I hope that these things are helpful to you, and thinking about what type of environment you want to work in. Teaching is hard. The profession is not an easy choice for people as a career these days. But if you find the right environment where you have the type of supports that I've talked about, you can still really love where you go to work every day. I get up every morning and I'm excited to get ready for the day, to go to work, to see my students, to see my colleagues, and to engage in the hard work and do the hard things that I need to do to see students succeed. I hope that you are enjoying some of these same benefits at your school. And if you're not, think about ways that you can be part of bringing those to your classroom and to your district. As always, thank you for listening. I hope that wherever you're at, you don't forget to work hard, be kind, and amazing things will happen. Have a great day. Happy
It's time for presents. It's time for presents. It's time for presents.